The key tool is network devices that would support segmentation. The old school way is still just as effective. It's just not as easy. It's not an interface that I can log into and just drag and drop and click buttons. I've got to
Right.
do some command line, right? So
So,
the
so
user friendly
let's go back.
version.
Let's go back to that old school way. The old school way was literally you got to switch for this, you got to switch for this, and never the twain shall meet. And that now we have VLANs. What is a VLAN?
Well, a VLAN is a capability of a switch. So newer switches, and I say new, but the VLAN capable switches have been around for 10 or more years. So the older switches still could do segmentation, but you would have to, you'd plug a console cable into the back of the switch, and you would bring up a command prompt, and you would have to physically type and know what to type, the commands and the configuration of the segments that you want to create. And heaven forbid, now we've got to add security with access control and other things. That's more typing and more things you have to know. And it prone to mistakes. And from a backup perspective, also something you would want to back up. So if that switch died and you need to put a new switch in, you've got a backup of that config for all those segments. Because if you don't, then your network is broken and everybody's upset. On the newer switches, even being around 10, 15 years, you still log into the switch, but you can do it over the network. You don't have to have a console cable. You hit the IP address, you get a nice user interface like a web page, and there are tabs and buttons and blanks to fill in. And as you interact with this interface, it's writing all that code in the back end to create these VLANs. And now it's a graphic, dashboard that shows you all your VLANs. You can name them, you can apply restrictions, you can do reporting. I mean, it's pretty easy to use.
So with VLANs, right, you're basically creating those segments that you had talked about earlier, right, Mike? So you might have say a VLAN ID of 10, which is your production network, maybe a VLAN ID of 20, which is your guest network, maybe a VLAN ID of 40, which is your HR network. And in most cases, once you configure it, these VLANs should not cross unless you give access for them to communicate with each other.